Welcome to Sunshine Cathedral's Queer God Squad. It's Thursday, January 9th, 2025. I am Bishop Darrell Watkins, the senior minister here at Sunshine Cathedral. With me today is Sunshine Cathedral's executive minister. He's also my husband, Bishop Robert Griffin, and Sunshine Cathedral's Minister of Connections, the Reverend Dr. Ann Atwell. Visit sunshinecathedral.org to learn more about our progressive faith community and how you can be a part of it no matter where you live in the world. And if you live in South Florida, be sure to check out the Sunshine Cathedral Center for the Performing Arts, offering entertainment for the LGBTQ+ community to benefit the LGBTQ+ community. If you enjoyed the Queer God Squad, please share this or other episodes with your friends, family, and social media communities. At Sunshine Cathedral, we're here to tell you that you are God's miracle, not God's mistake.
This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Radical openness in Scripture offers good news for queer people. In Acts chapter 8, written maybe between 90 to 100 years after Jesus' execution, a story is told of an eunuch who meets Philip, either the deacon Philip or the apostle. The eunuch is from Africa and would have been culturally and ethnically different from Philip. He's reading from the prophet Isaiah, and Philip stops to discuss the reading with him. When this African eunuch expresses interest in joining Philip's community, Philip doesn't hesitate in the slightest to baptize him on the spot. Philip has been providentially sent to encounter this African eunuch, someone Philip would have been taught to see as the other. Philip's job is to meet him, greet him, affirm him, include him, celebrate him, and see him as a friend, neighbor, and sibling. This story shows a very welcoming, inclusive attitude within the very early church. That's good news for anyone who has been considered other, an outsider, someone too different to be understood or welcome or embraced. There was an openness in the early Jesus movements that institutional churches have lost, but we here at Sunshine Cathedral have reclaimed. The other, the different, the marginalized, the queer. These are the people we insist are as loved by God as anyone else, and they have a home here at the Sunshine Cathedral. You know, I think of that story, remembering as a kid growing up in Sunday school, that was one of those primary stories that was taught from the perspective was in that context in the little Baptist church at that time. But much later, reading this as the other, you get to see yourself in this story. Like, I didn't realize how much of a eunuch I was at that time, given all the other things that was going on, because, you know, it was read in the context, it was what Scripture said. But now looking at that story through different lenses that kind of like sheds light on being the other as queer, being the other as Black, being the other as so many different things of gender or of race, nationality. It's like the other just fills in so many in our community now, especially the queer community and other communities as well. But I think particularly here at Sunshine Cathedral, being able to claim the other. And that other is however you want to feel that line in, however you find yourself marginalized or feeling as an outsider or feeling as the other from this group or that group, or even feeling as other from the queer community itself. You have a home at the Sunshine Cathedral, or at least a place to be able to come and explore what the other might mean for you, to you, and a safe place to say, this is who I am, and I can claim my space as being the other. But I think this story written at this time was a very powerful story, and looking back at it in historical context of even, the context of Philip talking with somebody who was not someone from his tribe, if you will, but being providentially sent by God to stop and to say, what's the story? Yeah. And I think it's in the exchange of understanding that we also learn people's stories also about what it means for them to be the other. And not a lot of detail, but even in that moment, Philip and Eunuch was willing to make a change. They did a course correction. Nothing can stop me from being a part of this community. And I think that's the same, kind of one of the messages here at Sunshine Cathedral. Nothing can stop you from being a part of this wonderful community as well. However you find yourself to be on that spiritual journey, spiritual path, this is a place for the other.
We have people, we have our global fellowship, and we have people who are watching us every week, participating with us. Sometimes they're on a thread, adding prayer requests and saying hi to other folks and interacting with the sermon, or sometimes commenting on the songs. So we have people that not even distance keeps you from Sunshine Cathedral. We have people in South Africa. We have people in Canada. We have a guy every week in Memphis, Tennessee. We have a guy every week in Monroe, Louisiana. We have a guy a woman every week in rural Georgia. We have a couple every week in New Jersey, in the suburbs between Philadelphia and New York. Every week we have a guy in Michigan, in suburbs of Chicago, every week. And I love that. So yeah, there's nothing to keep you from being part of this community, not even distance. I love it so much. Philip, there's some question, is that the apostle or the deacon? I think the deacon. And one, because I just want to. But so I also think it's probably true, because Acts is where we learn about the deacons, the first 7 deacons. And Philip was, of course, one of them. So that in that same, just a few chapters later that we hear about Philip, I'm guessing it's that Philip. And also, the deacons arose in response to people feeling otherized. That there were the Aramaic-speaking Jewish people, and then there were people who'd grown up outside of that in the Greco-Roman world, and they only spoke Greek. And in the early church, people were complaining our Greek widows aren't getting the same care as our Hebrew widows. Even though same religion, same community, they distinguish Greek and Hebrew. And so the deacons were called then to make sure, and they were all Greek deacons. They were Greek-speaking deacons. They were from that community to minister to that community so that community wouldn't feel left out. And so that's even why they exist. And so that Philip, whose ministry was to reach out and include the other, the deacon Philip, I see this now as him doing his diaconal ministry of including people who feel left out. The deacon, the eunuch, not named in the story, but tradition calls him Simeon Bacchus. And I think he's considered a saint in the Episcopal Church. But he is, as a eunuch, he would not have been allowed in the temple. It's not about his race, not about his ethnicity or his nationality, but anyone who had been who wasn't whole, as it were. So like if you were missing toes, you couldn't go in. If you were, you had just to be physically perfect or whatever. And so since eunuchs, by definition, are missing something that they used to have, they're broken or whatever. So he wouldn't be allowed in. So this is a contrast to that. He went to the temple, he's faithful, he knew he couldn't get in, but he still wanted to make the pilgrimage, say the prayers, go as close as he could, and he's on his way back. And so he couldn't get in the temple. And then here's Philip saying, well, you can get in this water. We don't, there's no rule saying you can't get in whatever we have going on. You can come to this communion table, you can come to this baptismal pool, you can come to this prayer service. And so that's the power of the story to me, is that yes, it's welcoming the eunuch, welcoming the other, but there are layers to it. Is that the reason Philip is a deacon is to welcome the other. The reason there are deacons is to welcome the other. The reason this is such a big deal for the eunuch is because he wouldn't have been completely included in another religious community. And so this is powerful for me in all those ways. And of course, eunuchs are in the scripture for queer theologians always read as queer figures anyway, because they would have been considered both a sexual and ethnic gender minority. And so we certainly know what that's about in the LGBTQ community. So yeah, just layer upon layer, layer. It's one of the best stories, I think, for queer people in the whole Bible.
Right. This is a fabulous story. And I go back to where Bishop Roberts said radical openness in the scripture. And it took me back to my seminary days when you would peel the layers of a scripture passage, when you would do exegesis, the tearing apart, the deep reflection on specific scripture passages. And for those who maybe struggled a little bit with some of that, it was really eye-opening. And a lot of folks handled it well, and it was great, it was wonderful. Let me take this back. And then there were others who knew that they couldn't take those interpretations, those studies, those understandings back to their church. And I think that's why, of course, I appreciate Sunshine Cathedral for many reasons, but this reason in particular, because we do the deep dive. We look at scripture passages, and we do the understanding, the deep dive. What was going on? What was the circumstance? What was the culture like? And then how do we interpret that for ourselves? So that's a great journey.
You know, we were just having dinner with someone the other night, and the question came about, well, how do we get here? You know, one of those, like the theological understanding. Like, how do you get to where you believe what you believe and what you preach today? And, you know, it was a little bit of a process of conversation. Like, you know, this didn't just happen. You know, it is a journey. It is a part of the journey, and it's part of understanding, you know, not just what's written in Scripture, but also deconstructing, pulling away and looking at through different lenses. And so when we get to, you know, the stories that we often talk about here, we have to understand that comes with a lot of background of study and reflection, and it's not just relying upon, oh, I read it and this is what it means on self-interpretation. Right. You got to have more built around that.
Deep dive.
Yeah. If you come to anything with, like, I have the answers, now I'm looking for proof that I'm already right. Right. That's not study. No. And our brand of spirituality is more evidence-based. We are like, okay, this is what I've inherited. I assume there's an agenda behind that. I assume there's some bias in this. I assume this may not even have actually happened exactly this way. So now I'm going to investigate and see what of it is factual, and what that isn't factual can still be true for me, even though I know it didn't happen. I don't believe anyone lived in a whale for 3 days, but still, this story can be important in about 47 different ways. And so, but it loses its importance if we literalize what can't be literalized. And so, what is different about us from dogmatic spaces is that we are investigative, we are curious, we are looking for evidence, and we don't mind changing our minds. Yeah. I mean, I believe things at 25 I did not believe at 12. I believe things at 40 that I didn't believe at 25. I believe stuff at 40, 18 that, that I didn't believe at 40. And yeah, so the more you learn, like, if you're afraid to let evidence change your mind, then you're not growing. And that isn't faith. That's just being in a trap, maybe even a cult. And so, yeah, we and then sometimes you even learn so much you come back around. Like, I accepted it blindly, I rejected it wholeheartedly, and then I re-embraced it with a new understanding of it. And that's the journey. That's the thing. So, yeah, I think what makes us different is that evidence matters to us, and we're willing to change our minds about things.
Definitely.
Well, that's today with the Queer God Squad. We want to thank you for joining us. We're here daily at 3 p.m. to have some fun and to discuss what our LGBTQ+ community is talking about.
Sunshine Cathedral is the world's leading progressive queer church. Progressive, queer, and God are words that naturally should go together.
We are all in this together. Remember that.
You are God's miracle, not God's mistake. Until next time, we are the Queer God Squad. Goodbye. Bye.